Everybody, welcome to a brand new film music media conversation. We have another collab spotlight here, and we're here with the amazing Cory Morrison, who's the director of Glisten and the Meiro Mission, and the two co-composers of the film, Meiro Stamm and Antonio Naranjo. Guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Really awesome.
Yeah. So I guess, so we're all going to focus specifically on your guys' collaboration as, your co-composers and director on this wonderful family holiday film, Glisten and the Meiro Mission. And I guess to start off is, how did you all meet? Was this I'm curious about the origin story of the first time you guys met. Is this your guys' first project together? Have you met before? I'm curious, what's the origin story for your guys' relationships? So I don't know, Cory, you want to jump in?
I can start there. Well, Meiro and Antonio, we've known for quite a few years, and we just never had an opportunity to work together. I remember, I think one of the first times I met you was a few years back on the boat for the Toon Boom cruise, having a couple of pops and sort of talking about the industry and talking about music and such, and what's coming down the pipe and all that sort of stuff. And then when Glisten and the Meiro Mission came around, we originally had another composer on board, but then he had issues, something going on with his folks. So he recommended you guys, Meiro and Antonio, and Rick, my brother. You guys have been in contact for quite some time, and it just seemed like the perfect opportunity. He looked at what you guys were doing, and you had some Christmas stuff already in the works, or you've done some in the past, and away we went, and that's pretty much how I remember it.
Yeah, how about, and yeah, you guys are the same on the opposite side?
I think the first series I ever worked on was produced in Ottawa, which is where Cory and Big Jump are based, and I had somehow met Rick through the producer on that other show. And this is going, way back. And then, like Cory said, we'd sort of been in touch, on and off, and just, it never worked out to work on anything. And then around the end of April this year, Antonio and I were working on a series, and I had another film coming up. And I thought, one more project would be really good. Literally the next day, Rick phoned, said, hey, we've got this Christmas movie. Do you want to do it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, put a thought out in the universe, and there you go, and
will it into existence.
Perfect. Yeah, it worked out perfect. And as for Antonio and me, I'll let Antonio tell that story.
Yeah, how did you two paired up together? I'm curious.
The two of us?
Yeah, I'm curious for you two, like as a co-composing duo. What's the origin story of your two's collaboration?
Ooh. Oh, I think I remember being recommended by, I think Meiro was looking for someone who could sing on, I think, a demo for an animated series that he was pitching on. And I came in, and I forget what it was, Meiro, if you can remember.
It was
Hero Elementary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we didn't get, but other good things came from that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes that's what it takes, to forge a strong bond. I came in just out of the blue being like, hey, Chris, said that you needed a singer. And I came in, and then I just kind of told him, I compose as well. And he's like, oh, interesting. And I sent him some stuff. And then he's like, maybe we'll find something for us. And I at that time, I went on tour with my then band, and we were in Europe. And I remember very specifically, we were in Weimar, Germany. And I got a call, and Meiro was like, hey, where are you? And I'm like, I'm in Germany. And he's like, well, when are you coming back? Because I think I found a project for us. And that was the start of it. And we've worked on a number of projects since.
Yeah. Wow.
Number now. Yeah. Like a strong collaboration.
That's amazing.
We've done 6, 8, 10 shows together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe if not in double digits, close to now. Yeah.
That's amazing. So
you're not sick of each other yet, is what you're saying.
Still going strong.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump into talking about Glisten, I'm curious because it is such a wonderful family animated film, and I love animation. I work at Cartoon Network Studios in production, and I've been there for 8 years, and I've been in this world of animation. And I just want to go around around the table, the virtual table, and why. I'm just curious, why do you love animation as a storyteller, as filmmakers, as storytellers? I'm curious, what about animation speaks to you? And Cory, if you want to kick us off.
Well, for me, I think it's because I get to be a big kid every
Yeah.
day, right? So, um, I'm just a big goofball nine times out of the 10. Ask my wife. So it's just something that I've always adored. My brother, who's my partner in the business, he's 14 years older than I am, and he
Oh,
started
wow.
in the animation industry in the 80s. He worked on like He-Man, Masters of the Universe, and
Oh,
the
wow.
Raccoons, and Fat Albert, and Teddy Ruxpin, and all these
Oh wow.
That's
classic
amazing.
80s
Yeah.
cartoons. So imagine being a kid, I would have been like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old when he's out there working on these films or these series. And I thought he was like geez, he was like a Hollywood superstar. I thought I saw his name in the credits. I would pause it, on my VHS tape back in the day. And it was just it was really incredible. There was one time where he drew He-Man and Skeletor on a piece of paper for me, and I went and I photocopied it about 100 times, and I sold the copies for 5 cents a pop to all my school buddies at school.
Hustling that early, that's awesome. Already a hustler. And you had to make that
But
money.
I fell in love with it big time. I was so enamored. So I knew exactly that's what I wanted to do, because he just seemed to be happy and loved what he did all the time. That's exactly what I wanted to do. It's what I tell my kids: wake up every morning and enjoy what you do for a living, because you're doing it for a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Meiro, for you, what do you like? I mean, you both, you and Antonio, have such a storied history in animation. So I'm curious, for you, what keeps bringing you back? Why do you love it so much? Why do you love the genre?
Well, for me, I think it started with the Warner cartoons. I mean, that was
Yeah,
just Saturday mornings for me as a kid. That was it. And I think, had I been able to draw, I probably would have become an animator or an artist like that.
yeah,
But just didn't have those fine motor skills. Um, and just I think, like Cory said, it's the fun factor, right? You can be goofy and you can be a big kid and you can tell jokes. And working in animation and the children's TV space, one thing that's really cool that I didn't realize at first was, you're making little kids happy every day, right? They're coming
yeah.
home from school either on their own, or if they're very young, with a parent or a caregiver or what have you, and they're watching your show and they're singing your songs, and it's a part of their life for many years, right? And it's really neat when you meet people like, oh yeah, you wrote that show. I loved that when I was, however old. Like, my daughter's 15, and so a lot of the shows that I worked on hit right when she was in kindergarten, and her friends will come over. Oh, they'll see the posters on my studio wall and say, I remember that show. I love that. They start singing this stuff. And it's great that you're bringing joy to people, right?
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
amazing. It must feel awesome to see that. Like, but they come and they see those posters and just like they light up, and it's like that. Because I mean, I'm the same way. I still love the stuff I grew up on. Like, everyone does. I can go back and watch even the younger stuff, like the preschool stuff that you still remember. But for
Well,
Antonio, for you,
they're bringing it all back now anyway. So it's
yeah,
like,
I
I
know.
know. I know it's
They're
true.
all adults with babies now. Doug has kids.
Yeah, yeah.
But we got to keep milking that IP. But
oh
Antonio,
man.
for you, what do you love about animation as a musical
Yeah.
storyteller?
Well, there's also the nostalgia factor. I'm from the generation of like Animaniacs, like
Yeah,
Tiny Toons, and I grew
Freakazoid.
up on Freakazoid. Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
Pinky and the
all those
Brain, the good feathers, like all that.
Spielberg
Like,
ambulance stuff. Yeah,
oh yeah, I love that stuff, and it's funny, like I think both Cory and Maya have already said that is downloaded into your brain, like that you
yeah,
never forget those things. I reference jokes that people who I grew up with, them, like we can just laugh about them now.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, working like to actually, it's funny. I started before I got into music. I was a visual artist, and I
Oh
was
wow.
very into animation. And yeah, it didn't take, but but I used to draw all my favorite shows, and there's something kind of, it's, yeah, like Cory said, like, you know, you wake up and do something you love. Like sometimes I pinch myself and be like, man, I'm working on some of the things that, you know, this generation of me are growing up on, and it's pretty wild. And it's also so much fun as a composer because you get to you have such a long leash. It's such a sandbox to play in. Everything is so
Yeah.
different. You can work in so many different genres. um it's Nothing is ever the same, and it's
Yeah.
really gratifying. And it, I mean, from a work standpoint, it makes you better at your craft because it forces you to become much more broad in the scope of what you are interested in and what you learn, you know, how to write this type of music for this type of thing. It's But it's also so much fun. Like
Yeah.
it never gets boring. Like I remember like waking up and being like, okay, today I guess I'm doing a Daft Punk for preschoolers, and then the next day I'll be writing something totally orchestral. It's just what, you know,
Yeah.
It's very
it's so
fulfilling.
gratifying, very
Yeah.
fulfilling. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get to it is also, there's a little bit, I think, less of a magnifying glass on it, except from the bigger corporate like standpoint. So it's like you get to maybe try some things and be a little bit more free
Yes.
with
Yeah.
your stuff and explore things. And
Absolutely.
but for this film, I'm curious. Like, listen to the Merry Mission. It's you know, it comes from Samuel Goldwyn Films and Build-A-Bear Entertainment's unique, you know, projects. I'm curious, how did it come to be, Cory? Like, how did this film come to be and come to you guys?
Well, yeah, it was interesting because you know, sometimes it's a phone call, right? In this
Yeah.
case, it was the producers, Foundation Media, Patrick Hughes.
Yeah, Patrick,
He
he did The Bad Guys. Like, he's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did The Bad Guys, and they've done several productions with Build-A-Bear Entertainment to date. And so he started asking around for a Canadian production company, and he ended up, my understanding is he ended up calling a mutual friend at Muse Entertainment, Jesse Prupa, and he recommended us, and that's how the conversation started. And literally about 6 to 8 months later, we signed the deal, and away we went. So it was it's like we hit the ground running. It was pretty crazy. It was tremendous fun. We had we had sort of carte blanche on the overall look and feel of the film, which was really fantastic. So yeah,
Yeah. So
really good.
before we talk about the music, I'm curious about from your standpoint as the filmmaker, as the director, when you got said, hey, we got an animated Christmas movie, kind of, you know, aiming towards younger kids. That comes with so much like stylistic and aesthetic baggage. So I'm curious, were you like, okay, like, I'm curious how you approach it, to be like excited about it and be like, how can I make my version or our version of a Christmas story that, you know, certain people has a certain, expect a certain tone, a certain look, a certain something. So how
Right.
did you guys approach it and be like, let's make something that's kind of our vision of it?
Are you talking visually, or are you talking also
I
musically?
I mean, visually for you. I
All
mean,
of it.
just, yeah, just visually, just for the whole film. Yeah, just
Well, geez. Well, the way I looked at it very simply, if this was a Build-A-Bear Entertainment film, we knew what we were getting into.
yeah,
This world had to be soft. It had to be bright and colorful. It had to be one giant big hug.
yeah,
That's what we were looking for, and that's what we were trying to do with the overall character development, the way the characters looked, the way the landscapes felt. And when things got a little bit more dangerous, as Marzipan moves into, like, as she starts to exit outside Santa's village and go out into the world, things become a little harder and more jagged and colder and cool.
yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that, you know, this movie is for kids, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's not really for adults, it's for kids.
Yeah.
It's for kids that believe in the spirit of Christmas. And so you want to make sure that you present almost their vision, their
Mm,
interpretation of what Santa's village would look like, and what the elves would look like. They kind of want to see a little bit of themselves on the screen. So you have these small elfling characters that are zipping around doing their thing, and making Santa's toys, and traditional looking Santa Claus, and
yeah.
the reindeer, of course, you know, very sort of regimented and a bit military. It was just such a blast from
Yeah.
from the get-go.
And
Absolutely.
it looks amazing. Like the animation is fantastic, and I'm sure, especially with these projects, I can't imagine the budget being huge or anything. I work in animation, I know how budgets can be, but to stretch a budget and to make it look that kind of wholesome, that richness, that feel of it, and of course a lot of that will come from the music as well. So Meiro and Antonio, what were the first conversations you had with Cory about the score? I'm curious, what were the first chats about getting the tone and the feel writing, making it feel like that warm hug? I'm curious, did you guys have certain ideas that you wanted to bring to it, or was it kind of obvious of what the direction needed to go based on the visuals or the pitch that Cory was giving you?
I think that phrase, yeah, make it like a big hug,
Yeah.
was key.
Mhm.
And so I think that was in a way the easy part, because all right, yeah, you've got, Santa's village, and it's very colorful and sparkly and fun and nice, and we're gonna have elf magic, and that's all fine. But then, when you get sort of into the last third of the movie, it gets pretty dark, right? I mean, our young hero Marzipan is out there, in the wilds, in the wasteland, right, in this far off canyon, and the wolves are after her, and it's like, okay, well, how far are we going to be able to go with the danger,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think just kind of establishing those two ends was really
Mhm.
key for us. Because if it went, too far one way, then the other would, like, it would feel lopsided, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then, Antonia and I, usually what we do is we'll sort of establish what themes we need to write, what the major ones are going to be, and then we'll both write them, and then we'll just send them back and forth and kind of riff on each other's material.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
that kind of gives it the musical DNA. And Antonio came up with this amazing, just little simple figure for the elves, and I mean, it's all over the movie. But had he not come up with that in the early days, it,
Well, that's the thing, because we had to hit the ground running. We are doing a Christmas film for this Christmas. We started, like I said, we had basically 10 months, 12 months to pull this whole thing together
Wow.
in a year. So when we brought these guys on to do it, we had to find people that were going to do it right the first time, and boy, did they deliver, like in spades. It's just unbelievable what they pulled together. And that tone that you're talking about, that there's this jingle that is continuously throughout the film, and it really grounds the story, and just you look for that tone, and it's
Mhm.
so natural and
Yeah.
so a part of this film. It blew me away when I first heard it. I thought it was wonderful.
That's
Mm.
amazing. Well, Antonio, I mean, I
Yeah.
love that idea that to get the musical DNA, you guys are passing stuff back and forth. I've talked to
Yeah.
co-composers where sometimes we'll kind of just go apart and, oh, you handle this, we'll handle this, we'll come together and make sure we're like talking and we're on the same page. But to have that kind of back and forth, it has both of your fingerprints on it, I think. So I'm curious, Antonio, from your
Yeah.
point of view, what's that process like for you and working with Meiro?
I mean, it feels very natural. I think it feels very natural just because I think for me, I'll speak for myself. I come from like I was in a band forever, and that background, so it was very much a collaborative way of writing, especially with my collaborators in the band. Like, we wrote everything together in the room. Like, no one came in being like, I have an idea, you know what I mean? So like,
Right.
there's something, and so it's funny. I've always wanted to kind of see if you could bring that way of writing, that collaborative atmosphere, into a sphere in the film world where it can be, when you're writing music, quite lonely.
Yeah.
You're working on your own, but there's something so wonderful, and it keeps the ideas fresh, and it keeps you motivated. It keeps the ball in the air and momentum moving when you can pass things naturally back and forth, and just kind of, it becomes like a jam, more or less,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
you walk into a room and someone's doing something. Oh, I really like that. I really like that. I hear something now. And that's kind of what we've created in our workflow, is like, we just kind of feed each other inspiration as we're chipping away at something, right? And like, you're finding that source of inspiration, and you're expounding on it.
Yeah.
It's worked really well for us, and it moves things along quickly and keeps it very cohesive. Like you said, you've
Right.
talked to some collaborators who maybe just go into their separate spaces, but and I know Meiro and I actually went and watched the film in the theaters last week. Watching it, we were like, it sounds wholly cohesive. It sounds like one thought, which we both agreed was a victory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's the story that that everyone's working
Well, that's
for.
it.
Yeah,
It's all in service of the story.
absolutely. So I'm curious, what was I guess musically, where was the starting point? When did you guys come into production? And like Cory, did you have them early on to have the script reading, or do you wait to show them animatics? I'm curious, when do you start giving them materials to start working on?
I I'm trying to recall, but I think I gave you guys the animatic to at least start jamming off of, right from the like before there was any animation. You definitely had the animatic. I had all my temps, my temp music, my temp sound effects in it to get a sort of an idea and tone of where my head was at for the film. All of which is completely totally different from what these guys put together, which thank God they did. Yeah, I think right, like it's I needed to get something out to them as soon as possible. So we started with the animatic and we started to build from there. And then as the animation started to flow in, it started to come out in sequences. So we would do sort of act one, they'd see that, act two, see that, act three, see that. But they still at least had the animatic to pull it all together cohesively from stem to stern. Yeah,
Absolutely. So musically, what was the starting point, guys? What is it? Once you got that animatic and you first saw kind of what the story is and what the kind of flow is and the tone is and the emotion is, was it just starting with theme suites and stuff like that, or did you try to, you mentioned building the kind of DNA or the sound or the palette, and then you started kind of going into scenes? I'm curious, what was the starting point and how did it evolve into more of, I guess, scoring to picture and stuff like that?
It was very much the identifying the major themes and jamming on those. There was going to be a Glisten sort of mystical, quasi-mystical theme, so we needed to get that right away because that was a big deal, obviously. The happy Santa Village elf thing, and the reindeer were different as well, right? Because they had modernized, right? This is sort of key to this story, and it's like, okay, well, what's the sound of the reindeer going to be? And I guess there was also the snowboarding sequence, which happened multiple times, where Marzipan is kind of venturing further and further afield from home, deeper and deeper into the adventure. And I think those were the sort of first moments that we identified where, okay, we're going to have these recurring themes. And then, yeah, it was all right, let's just go out and both start working on them. And we have a shared Dropbox folder where basically we just drop piano sketches, whatever into there. And I think one thing that's really great about doing it that way is, as a composer, you have all these ideas when you start. Oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to write that and I'm going to use this instrument for this and, whatever, right?
Right.
And you kind of have that like decision paralysis sort of situation sometimes. But when you're getting stuff from your writing partner, you'll pull something in and then go, oh, you know what? I would never have thought of this in this context, in this moment of the film. And it makes you rethink your own material.
Yeah.
I think makes it richer, right? At least certainly for me, it does. And I think probably for Antonio.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and stuff that you thought like maybe, oh, this isn't that good, but I'll send it to Antonio anyway, and he'll go, oh, this is great. What are you talking about, right? You're just putting it in the wrong part of the movie. It should go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Did you guys have like a spotting session to kind of feel where stuff should go, or was it kind of just did Cory just give you guys? Did you just hand it to them, Cory, and you kind of figure it out?
Did we have a spotting together? No, I think we looked at some scenes, right?
Yeah.
You would deliver things like in sequences. So I had those moments where I could sit down, look at the sequence, see how the music sort of felt with the overall feel of the film in those spots. And geez, like I said, it really came to fruition really quickly with what you guys were pulling together right from day one. Like one of my favorite sequences is the sequence with Cinemag and Sage Evergreen in front of the fireplace. That whole sequence is so beautiful to me, and to me it's very, very memorable. Just the whole tone of it, it's wonderful.
Yeah. So I guess the starting point, I think there's a lot of composers out there who maybe are getting started in the business or maybe a little green and kind of working on their first projects. But for you guys, for composers, I'm curious, what were so when Cory sat you down and says, this is the film, here's the pitch, this is what we're doing. What are, I guess, the first questions you asked Cory as the director? What are first questions that you guys like to pull from your director and to help you start your process? Like, what are the kind of the meat that you need to pull from your director to kind of help you with your creative process? I'm curious, like, what are like the best questions to ask?
Well,
that's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
I think one thing is, that like Cory mentioned, there was temp music, not a lot of it,
No.
at certain key moments. And so, one thing right away is this indicative of what you want? Right. Or is this sort of just the general idea, right? Something epic here. Or when you say epic, do you mean exactly this? Right. That's point one.
What's epic? What does epic mean?
Right? I mean, it can mean a lot of different things.
It can be very broad.
It needs to be cinematic.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst is when they say make it funny, because, well,
yeah,
that depends a lot on context, right?
Big time.
I think the one thing that we did have though were there were songs, right? There are songs in the film, and they were in there, and we knew they were going to be in there, and they were kind of tent poles, right, to work towards.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that was really helpful, actually, right? Because there's already something there musically that's going to be there, so you've got that to kind of work off of.
And were the songs, were they already kind of recorded at this point? Did you know the style and the sound of the songs, or did you just know where the placement was?
No, they were finished.
Oh, they're finished.
There,
okay, yeah. So you're able to really make sure that the score doesn't kind of trip over them, or nice segue between them and everything like that. So that was great. Yeah.
And I think mainly, like Antonio, I think we were really asking about tone and how scary can we be, and I guess
cinematic.
One thing that Cory did tell us, and I think this is an important thing too, is to leave space. There could be moments when just the sound effects are gonna, he wanted to hear the wind when it's howling and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's important to know when not to use music. It's very easy to just do wallpaper and go back, especially for children and stuff. We do 11.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, we do like 11 minutes at Cartoon Network, so it's tight. It's not a lot of real estate to have like a breath or kind of that a beat. So, but you need that break, and then it makes when the score comes back in, or the music comes back in, or the moment, the emotion, it hits a lot better. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And it was
cool.
You need.
Sorry, go ahead, Antonio.
No, it's okay. I was just agreeing.
I was going to say, just to your point, Kaya, about the 11 minutes. I mean, we've all done a lot of 11 minutes.
Yeah.
And having a 90-minute, and being able to stretch, and having a 3-minute sequence where there's very little dialogue.
Yeah.
Right. And just really being able to develop the thematic material and go for it was a real treat, and that was really nice.
Well, I think props to Cory. Props to Cory too, because like I feel like it's so easy to just be like, kids, like make it bright and like loud and noise and everything, but to have those moments, like the stuff that like I grew up watching, is just have those emotional beats, and just like those are the ones that I still remember, not kind of the more zany, kind of loud, colorful things. Yeah,
I agree. Like,
sorry, I cut you off. Sorry, Antonio. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. This was at least my first animated feature, and I've worked with Meiro on a couple animated shows before, and it was an interesting shift, because while keeping it like a warm hug, but where you're working in 11 minutes, like you said, it's so much music. It was
Yeah.
it was a very conscious choice to be like, oh no, but this is a feature film. And like to be like the elements that you would, while it's still animated, it was like kind of like a bit of a, I had to, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, like an adjustment to be like, we're doing animation, but this is long format. And like, so the rules, the way that you'd be like, no, but I would do it, I would score things differently if they were a feature film, but being like, but it is a feature film, even though it's an animated feature. So like, yeah, using the space and having that more time was, I think, a breath of fresh air working in this space. It really,
absolutely.
yeah.
For sure. So Cory, I'm curious, as a director, I guess, how do you approach directing composers? Because, you know, as I'm sure there's filmmakers out there who are jumping into this and are going to be working with their composers for the first time, and I'm curious, what are the, I mean, it seems like you really just trusted them to just take everything, so there wasn't maybe much direction that you had to give them because they really handled it. But I'm curious in terms of like getting feedback, or you do, if they need something to be revised, like how do you approach, I guess, directing versus directing your amazing cast, which you had a fantastic cast on this, but how do you shift your directing style to work with these two?
Well, you are right. I did give them the like an open door. You guys,
Yeah.
I really trusted these guys to come in and do the work. Like I said from the beginning, there wasn't a tremendous amount of time to dive into. I wish we had more time to really sort of, you know, like uh feel it all out from beginning to end a little bit more. But I have to say, like through the initial conversations and then as they started to upload sequences, like the turnaround was quite quick. They took notes, like not that there was like pages and pages of notes across the board. Most of it was just, hitting a particular moment or maybe pulling back on a particular moment. But 9 times out of 10, they pretty much hit the mark all the way through. Um, like I found, like for me, there's a big difference between obviously television and feature. When you say cinematic, there is tonally, there's just more uh more I'm trying to think of the word, more stuff, I guess, going on, more
Yeah, but
just
there's
more
just more
sounds,
elements and
more
just like,
elements,
yeah.
more teeth to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's, when you think of like a kid's cartoon, it's easy to go simple. It's easy to go a bit more cartoony or comedic with the tone throughout the for an 11-minute show. For this, you really need to have the music carry things forward and help tell the story from beginning to end. Music is so vital for film and television. We all know that. And because you can have this wonderful scene where, and I'll go back to that scene with Cinemag and Sage Evergreen, where she's explaining, how you really need to believe in something. It's like, the one thing that you can find is love, and that if you didn't have that a nice tone, some nice music in that, you would not have had the same reaction that you would have gotten if without that music, right? So it's so important that you have that stuff in there, and it helps like drive your attention forward to see what's going on in the story. It is at the end of the day, they just did an unbelievable job from stem to stern. So.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations on the movie and then the whole, I mean, to come together under a crunch, I'm sure, and the stress that comes with all of that. And but I'm curious also about musically, and maybe the film as well, just tonally with the script and everything. You know, with kids, as you mentioned, it's like it is a kids film, but you also don't want to, I guess, talk down to them. You want to bring it into their world, and you want to, really kind of recognize their emotions. I grew up watching Don Bluth and stuff like that, where he was very much saying, don't treat kids' emotions the same way you would treat adults' emotions. And I'm curious, with something like this, was it especially with the Christmas genre, like I think back to my favorite Christmas scores, where it's like, whether it's John Williams with Home Alone or John Debney and Elf and stuff like that, where it might be, is it hard to find the line where you get maybe too maybe too schmaltzy, too saccharine, and you want to kind of pull it back and make sure it still kind of resonates and not too, make it not too melodramatic or anything like that? Or was that a challenge with you guys to find that on this film, musically and I guess with the film overall? Or was it kind of you're able to find that tone and not have to, I guess, debate it in your head too much, and it just felt right and felt natural?
I guess I can go first. Like I think honestly, the story is a very simple story. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of twists and turns to the story, and it was designed that way specifically for younger kids to follow. And I'm talking like,
Right.
8-year-old kids, 6-year-old
Yeah.
kids, right? Or even younger, so they could dial in and just watch the film and not get lost and really enjoy the characters, the world, and the environment. And the music carries it forward in that case. I don't know, guys. What do you think on your side?
Well, yeah, I think
Right.
we're both going.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. It is a very simple story, and it's very clear sort of what emotional beats we needed to hit, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when I say simple, I don't mean simplistic, but it's just
No, so I don't think simple. I think simple is actually a compliment. I think when things get too crazy and unfocused, then you kind of lose the kind of the core, like the just that emotional
Yeah.
like heartbeat of the narrative. So I even in adult features and just like big bombastic action movies or complex dramas, I think simplicity was really important.
yeah, and I think since it is an animated project, you know, in many ways where you'd have to worry about being, too schmaltzy or whatever in a live action setting, in animation you can always exaggerate a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because it
Mhm.
does animation just visually in every way possible thrives on exaggeration, right? So
right.
you can go that little bit over the top and then it's kind of just enough.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, and Tony, I think, just going back also to the previous question, like probably talking with Cory just about emotional direction
Yeah.
would be the number one thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, ultimately, it's a story, whether it's a story for children or it's a story at around Christmas. It's like it's the story. It's real to the characters in the film, and it's real and not for the audience who are going to watch it. I mean, I think we can add, we all, you have your Christmas palette. You have there's those touchstones that you can use, of course, that you're going to use to identify the season, and just like, the way that people think of like a warm hot chocolate,
Yeah,
like, what that is musically.
yeah.
But just, yeah, it's finding those emotional touchstones, because you're ultimately just telling a story. It doesn't matter who it's for, right?
Yeah.
And the rest can come afterwards. You fill it in with the brushes that you need. Yeah, it just, I think it's that simple. You're going to get it right, pretty, or at least pretty close, if you follow those things, and then you can get in there and massage it, and give it the texture and the palette that it needs to breathe in the time and space that it is. But like, yeah,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
emotions are always honest.
Yes,
Nice,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you look back at the whole project, the whole experience, Cory, you mentioned how creatively rewarding animation is. So I'm curious for this project specifically, what was the most creatively rewarding moment from the entire production, whether it was having that first script in your hand or having that first locked picture, or for you guys having like the first themes like together, or the finished whole project. I'm curious, what was the moment where we just kind of look back at the whole experience, go, oh, that was great, I love that. So maybe Cory, what was the best memory for you, creatively rewarding, from the whole production?
Wow.
It doesn't have to be music, it can be like working with a cast member, a certain song or anything. I'm curious.
There's so many beautiful milestones throughout the whole production that are just as good as the next, like just from finalizing the characters, and we know that these are our characters and we're ready to go every day when the people that were on this production put their heart and soul into every single aspect of this film to bring it to fruition is that to me, just the collective nature of making something like this. I think it's the most joy I've actually had on a project in a very, very long time. So I think for me, it was just the collaborative nature from stem to stern, and just how dedicated everybody was to hitting that deadline and getting this done and out the door in the best possible way, right? And in the most creative way. That for me is everything. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Antonio, about for you, from your perspective, what was the most memorable, creative, rewarding part of it?
Oh man, I mean, I don't know if there's one in particular. I think there were many milestones. I think, to echo what Cory just said, like there are many milestones. I think when you start, they're like little victories that lead up to like little battles that lead to like winning the war, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like where you're like, oh, you found that theme, and then all of a sudden it's like, I always think of like finding a score as like you're digging for bones, like you're digging for dinosaur bones, and every so often you're like, oh, here's the head, and here's the tail, and then next thing you know, you have the whole skeleton, right? Like it's like those little things where you're like, oh, it's revealing itself, it's starting to take shape, and you're like, I found this theme, and like, oh, this theme works throughout, and you start to feel the universe become three-dimensional, like and it was always, and I find it's really gratifying, and it really keeps you going when you hit those when you have that moment where you're like, oh my god, like it's coming, here it is, and then you're just like, I gotta keep going, until I see the whole thing. Yeah, I know it would be nice to give like, and I'm sure I could think of one, but those are the moments that resonated with me, especially because it was my first feature, when I was like a first animated feature, and seeing when we go from animatic and then Cory sending us updated scenes, and you're like, whoa, the universe has just gotten that much brighter and more lush and full, and then to match that was a really cool experience.
Absolutely.
That's it. Wow. How was it seeing it in the theater? That would have been like a pretty amazing moment to hear your music on those speakers. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah, which is something that these days is not a given, because a lot of stuff goes to streaming or stuff, and it's like we had a special screening at Warner Brothers for us for Chicken Run 2, and I was like, I am so happy I get to see this movie in a theater, because it's going straight to Netflix, and I get to hear Harry's score and see the stop motion animation on the big screen and all the details, and so that must have been a treat.
Yeah, that was really nice. That was definitely that was a highlight for sure.
Oh yeah, a novel experience for sure.
Yeah, but I think what Antonio described, and Cory actually just sort of taken both of those. I mean, the revealing and like, oh, okay, here's our world, and the collaboration. I mean, I know one thing for me is always, at the beginning of a project, you're excited, you have all this energy, right? You're getting into it. It's like, known Cory for a long time, but just never had the chance to work together. And it's like, all right, here we go. And we've established our themes, and Antonio and I have done our thing. We've sent our themes back and forth. And like, okay, now I'm going to write this cue, and you're going to write that cue. And then we'll do this one, and we'll send those 3 to Cory. That'll be our first preview, right? And, that always terrifies me every single time, no matter how many times I've done it. It's always terrifying, right? Because there's all this anticipation. And so for me, a highlight was, when we sent those first cues to Cory, and he came back like instantly, was like, yes, this is it. Just keep going. And then you really feel like the race has begun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Up until that moment, it's really just talk.
Yeah.
You might think you found a dinosaur skeleton. You might think all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You get the thumbs down.
Oh yeah. Nothing worse. You send something off,
right?
You wait on bated breath, like you're waiting for that email, and then you hear that little ding, got the email. You look at it and you're like, oh, here's the moment. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Right? That's it,
I always look at like the first couple words before even opening the email, when you just see it in your column.
Oh,
like, is and we're like,
Yeah. How are they
usually
going? If
yeah,
there is it, hey guys, exclamation point, or is it just a
yeah,
comma? And you're like,
exactly.
I don't, if it's just a comma, I don't want to open it
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
But that kind of high five moment is just so satisfying, right?
Oh,
Because then you have the confidence, and
That's it.
if you stumble along the way, then it's okay, right?
Yeah.
And I just love that, because then it's like you can just let your inspiration flow and just go for it. And yeah, that was one. And the thing is, actually, we had a surprise, right? Because originally the opening titles were going to be a song.
yeah.
And so we were working for several weeks, and when's the song coming? When's the song coming? When's the song coming? It's like, hey guys, there's no song. You have to write the opening titles. And that's a big cue to do, right? I mean, it's, I think, 2 minutes or something,
It was about 2 minutes. Yeah.
right? And it's the
Wow.
beginning of the movie. We're establishing everything, and all this time we think, we don't have to worry about that, pressure's off. And then all of a sudden it kind of came in. And so I think when we wrote that cue and everybody liked it and signed off, that was for me a real highlight for sure.
Yeah, and what a bunch of amazing real estate to have as a composer, to kind of like have almost like an overture to kind of start the whole journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess to wrap up, I want to go around and I love talking about people's inspirations, because we talk about being big kids and working in this industry, and I'm curious what everyone's like favorite anime. Cory, you talk about 80s cartoons and everything, and we're growing up. So I'm curious, what were you guys watching as kids? What do you remember that is still in your brain today that you look back fondly? Something that's nostalgic, something that still is emotional to you, or fun or funny. I grew up really. I know you mentioned Meiro, like those WB cartoons. I loved Silly Symphony and Looney Tunes. I always watched I never watched when they started, like Chippendale never talks to me. Like I don't watch Rescue Rangers. Like I need the original ones where it's just Donald Duck fighting Chippendale or something like that. But I also love Fantasia and Bambi, like these movies that were kind of less dialogue and more music and all that stuff. And but I'm curious, like Cory, for you, what are the stuff that you grew up watching?
Honestly, one of my all-time favorite animated films is Beauty and the Beast. The opening to Beauty and the Beast, I had tears in my eyes, and I'm like a 17-year-old kid watching it for the first time with my buddies, and I had to hide the fact that I was like welling up. I just thought it was so beautiful. The whole movie, just the way the Beast moved, and the fact. And that's what kills me, is like I like it was knowing that was classically animated, hand drawn, that the art form in its purest form, right there was just it's beautiful to see that on screen. So that to me, I think that's one of my all-time favorites. Like I love all the 80s stuff. All of it were like gigantic toy ads for kids back in the 80s, but I love them nonetheless. You watch them now, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I watched that. But you did, and you loved it because you didn't know any better, right?
G.I. Joe, baby.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man, it was great. But fond memories of all the cartoons I grew up on, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Meiro, for you, what was the stuff from your childhood that you really loved?
Yeah.
Movies, shows, what?
Yeah, so I mean, all the classic WB stuff, and the later, like the Tiny Toons and Animaniacs, all of that for sure. One thing that I've always loved and have a soft spot for, and I know for some people I think it's kind of a controversial choice, but that original Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings movie.
Oh yeah,
I loved that and still do.
I remember I had the VHS of that. I mean, the animation style is so unique and like it's wonderful. Yeah.
All that rotoscoping stuff.
All the rotoscoping.
It is, and the score, it's a lovely score. It really is. And I still, I mean, some people will hate me for it, but I prefer it to the live action versions.
Wow. Yeah.
Captures the spirit of the book more in my opinion, but
Sure.
and it just just the Nazgul and Gollum, and it just all looked so cool.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. I don't think I've ever heard that one. So yeah, that's fun. Antonio, for you, I know you mentioned Animaniacs and kind of all that stuff. Is there anything else outside of that world that you kind of movie?
Oh yeah, there's The Secret of Nim.
Oh yeah.
I remember watching, and I know that was, and maybe Cory, you know a bit more about and correct me if I'm wrong, but was that a studio that there were a bunch of Disney animators who
Bluth,
then
Don
That was
Bluth.
Don
Yeah.
Bluth and Gary
Don Bluth.
Goldman.
Yeah.
That's what started his foray into starting up his own company. It was him and Jerry
Gary Goldman. Yeah.
Gary Goldman.
Jerry Goldsmith did the score.
Yeah, Jerry Goldsmith. Yeah,
Yes,
correct.
he did.
Yeah, Jerry Goldman. Yeah.
But
Which is a
that
wonderful
film,
score.
talk about treating, kids like adults. That film felt like something else. It felt dark. It felt real. It felt like, and they, the Brave Little Toaster was another one that they made, and obviously The Land Before Time. There was just something very unique. There was a very unique feeling to their films that felt separate from everything else that was being made, completely separate from the Disney stuff that that we all watched. It just, to this day, the Secret of Nim in particular.
Yeah, Don's style is so like unique too. I mean, even his Disney stuff, like Fox and the Hound, like the style of the animation.
Oh yeah, that's
and
also one of my. Yeah, that was. I think I was very partial to him.
I know that was my bread and butter too growing up, and American Tail, and I know he didn't do Fievel, but the second one,
didn't do
Fievel Goes West.
I know.
Yeah, Fievel Goes West is still great.
I know that I could sing you the whole song. I can sing you all the songs still. Like there were
songs, man. James Horner scores. Oh my god, I start crying right now.
He wasn't afraid to, be a little scary, for kids.
Yeah.
And that's what's so great. There was no sugarcoating anything, I found. With Don Bluth and his films for sure. Whereas, Disney was a little bit safer to watch.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's a perfect way to talk about animation and wrap it up, because you can do anything. You can make it nice and sweet and a warm hug. You can go a little bit dark and deeper. And I'm really glad that I'm seeing more stop motion. I'm seeing Chicken Run 2 come out, and Pinocchio, and more different styles with Into the Spider-Verse, and the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Like I think finally saying that everything doesn't have to be CG. It doesn't have to be kind of Disney Pixar, and I think there's so many different styles and stories, and anime is really kind of blowing up on Netflix and all these shows, and it's such an amazing world. And I think people need to realize that it's not just for kids. It's also like, I would love to see an R-rated animated action film or something like that in theaters. But I hope
Yeah.
He's like, I got it.
Well, in fact, in about 12 months.
Which means you guys need to get to work. We got 12 months.
Yeah, I know.
Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for all your insight this evening, and opening up your world and talking about the music and the animation and everything. So, guys, appreciate it so much. Thank you. It was so much fun.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure.